and Carl Manka, who are both intimately involved in this process, and they will also chime in with answers should you have any. We debated going back and forth about this, like how are we gonna mute everyone and just have you guys ask questions in a little chat box or not? I think because we all pretty much know each other, we're going to leave this open. And so if you guys do have any questions, just chime in. And if we get a lot of, if this makes the process difficult or if there's a lot of background noise, we'll just mute everyone. And you can raise your hand through the module if you have any questions, or the chat box, send us a question, and we will answer your questions as we move along. We are recording this, so we will send out the recording afterward to you and to those who are not able to join us this morning. A quick overview of what this is exactly. I received a phone call yesterday from one of the governing board saying, who do we want to have in on this webinar? In truth, this is actually for your benefit to go through the instructions, to give you the rationale should you guys have any questions to ask. This is a brand new process for us. How we're doing capital outlay requests and maintenance and disclose has changed a bit as well. So we just wanted to clarify the instructions should you have any questions. And if not, if you feel pretty comfortable with the instructions, feel free to just look when you have certain questions to certain parts, or even to leave the webinar if this is something that does not feel necessary for you. Again, this is just for your benefit as we move through this new process. I'm going to go ahead and start to say that we sent out to the governing board CFOs and the capital project managers on, I believe it's Friday, May 26th, the set of instructions and a lot of these attachments that we're going to go through today. If you did not receive those, or if you want copies of them, send me an email, or Crystal an email. You should have her email address that came through the webinar instructions. We will send you those attachments. But again, we sent this out about 2.5 weeks ago, and we're going to walk you through our rationale. So you should be able to see the screen in front of you. It says for you, Instructions for Preparation of Fiscal Year 2018-19 Capital Outlay, Maintenance, and Disclosure Funding Request. This is our main document. And I will be shifting through different attachments. You should be able to see everything as I move forward. So the table of contents and the attachments reference. I just want to give a quick overview of where we are right now and why things have changed. Focus provided an awesome opportunity for us to reassess how we are going to assess capital outlay projects, what's best for the state, best for the institutions. Instead of receiving 2 governing board priorities, we now receive 8. So that necessitated a change in how we actually assess all the 8 different governing board requests. It also gave us an opportunity to sit back and think, how can we invest our capital outlay funds in a way that is better for the state and, of course, better for the institutions. So some things that are changing. This year, you will notice, for TX purposes, a more involved, almost like a proposal process for the funds, giving us a rationale for why you need this project and how this project will benefit your institution and, again, the state. And we are going to have a group of reviewers on our end who will review each of the project's background and assess using a rubric that we will go over in limited detail. And that will all be done by our mid-November commission meeting, so that we can then recommend to the governor an 18-19 capital outlay maintenance project. So the timeline, working back from that mid-November commission meeting. Again, we sent everything to you on May 26th. We are requesting that everything get back to us by September 15th. I'm in the timeline section right now. September 15th, that is all the components that are requested. We need all of those because we do anticipate using those 2 months between September 15th and November 16th to assess the materials. Of course, your governing board needs to sign off on these projects. If your governing board's meetings are on or after September 15th, please go ahead and send us the materials as preliminary and just notify us after September 15th to say, yes, our governing boards approved, or our governing board did not approve this project, here's what we're doing instead. But we need those materials by September 15th just so we can go ahead and get started. So November 16th is when our commission meeting is. Other dates that are important, Wednesday, June 7th, here we are giving this webinar. And then Monday, August 14th at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, we are having, Central Daylight Time, we are having our Capital Outlay First Look meeting. This is something that we've done now. This will be our third year where governing boards that are requesting capital outlay projects come to THEC and just give an overview of what those projects are. It's a very light overview. It's not an in-depth conversation, but it gives THEC and also governing board stakeholders an opportunity to know more about what your requests are, so that when the commission comes together in November, and then when F&A and the governor's office are deciding on projects, they just have a little more context as to what you are going to present. We will send out in the coming weeks that calendar appointment so it can be on your schedule. Going back to January, we all met here at THEC in ongoing meetings through April and then a little bit into May with representatives from systems and institutions discussing, well, if we're going to change things, what should our criteria be? And I've already mentioned several of them. We should have projects that are closely linked to state goals, be that Drive to 55, workforce development, research. We should also have capital projects that enhance the campus mission. So related to, what are the needs of your institution? Going on here to page 4, we know that your campus has a mission, but what are also your facility needs? Looking at the space planning guidelines or what the master plan said you need, how do the projects fall into those particular needs? And then some other aspects like the match that we've had in the past. External funding should still be a part of our capital outlay request process, though we have changed that. So when we thought through, this is going back again to January, through our rubric, we always use these criteria, these 8 criteria, as a touchstone to build our rubric and this process. Another aspect of the capital outlay process is recognizing that there are different types of projects even at institutions. So a new construction project is different from, say, a major renovation. If we're going to instill a rubric process, we should recognize that. The rubric should recognize that those are different type of projects. So we are asking the institutions, when they submit their capital outlay projects, designate to classify whether that project is new construction or major renovation. The new construction projects are those that are new facilities or substantial additions to current facilities that require significant programmatic or operation expansion. Major renovation is those that change the function, use, or capacity of existing facilities. Understanding that seems like a pretty distinct difference between the two. We've talked a lot on our end, knowing that there may be projects that you propose where some clarification as to what type of project that is needed. So please be in conversation with us if you are unsure if a project is a new construction or a major renovation, because again, that does matter regarding the rubric as well as the match external funding expectations. The capital outlay rubric is there to help you as you begin to put together your proposal for the capital outlay project. If you look at the THEC Capital Outlay Rubric Overview, this is what I have in front of you. This will give you the background information as to how we landed on these different rubrics. And to go lightly into each of these rubrics, you can see that the rubrics differentiate based on sector. So community colleges, TCATs, university, and non-formal units, 3 different overall sector rubrics. And then within those 3 rubrics, different rubrics for type of project. So new construction versus major renovation. Those are different rubrics for each of those three sectors. Again, I'm not going to go into the rationale as to why they're weighted that way. However, this THEC Capital Outlay Rubric Overview does go into some detail about that. Moving on to page 5, external funding, match thresholds. This has changed. In the past, thresholds were as high as 25% at universities for both new construction and major renovation projects. There was no distinction there. And of course, there was distinction based on sector overall. And a concern was, for some type of projects, it's really hard to say raise 25%, thinking about major renovation projects. Or a TCAT may not have the same capacity as a community college to raise a certain amount of funding. There were a lot of concerns about how the match was employed, and we heard that, we recognized that, and we spoke with many about how we can change this, and some of you guys were a part of that conversation. So we've changed exactly how the match is used. What we've done is lower that threshold. Again, I said earlier 25% was the threshold for universities. That means you could not have brought us a project unless you had $25 of match in hand. That is now much lower, lower based on sector, lower based on project type, major renovation, new construction. If you go down to the middle of page 5, for instance, if you look at new construction at community colleges and TCATs and non-formal units, the minimum, the threshold to submit a project to us is now 2% match. Where before, I believe it was a 10% match at community colleges, it's now 2% to submit. Now, part of our rubric, however, is a scoring element that takes into consideration money that you've raised above that minimum threshold. I won't go into the details on how that's calculated. That is also in a lot of detail in this capital outlay attachment we have here. It goes into the external funding components, as you can see here, and how it is actually scored. But you have a much lower threshold to now submit projects, and then there is an encouragement, an incentive to raise some more above that minimum threshold. And we score up until a maximum. So if you look at new construction, community colleges, TCATs, non-formal units, 2% to play, and then as you get up to 10%, that balance of weight is scored in our rubric. Above 10%, that's great if you can bring that match. However, it is not scorable in our rubric. Moving on to the biggest element of this request, what it is we're asking from you. The outlay request requirements, if you look at this spreadsheet here, this is a spreadsheet, the first spreadsheet we sent to you. It goes over exactly what the fields needed in our Excel spreadsheet for you to tell us about the capital outlay projects. This does not differ much from what we've requested in the past that we've sent to systems, telling us, well, tell us what the project name is, the project type, the cost, what your match funds are, and what you want from the state. We have added some new fields here for how much square footage will be added or renovated or replaced. But this is something we've asked for in the past, and we are continuing to ask going forward. Another element are capital out years. Finance and Administration, Department of Finance Administration asks that we submit every year what it looks like down the road. So we know what 2018-19 requests are. What do you anticipate requesting in 2019-20, 2021, 21-22, et cetera? So it's the 4 years of out years that we require. This is something that has always been a part of our process, and it is as well going forward. Beyond the fields here, the out years, you do not need to give any rationale or any of the other requirements that we have for the 18-19 outlay request. All we're asking for out years is that you just tell us what you might expect to ask. Nothing about how it meets state needs or institutional needs is needed. That will come in the years as we move forward. moving on to the actual assessment materials. What we need for each capital outlay project. A short abstract of no more than 250 words, shorter is always better. Just tells us what the project is, a brief description of it so that we have an understanding and we have some talking points when we're referencing it here and around the office and also to our commission. The DB70 form. That is, I sent you an example from TBR's DB70 form. UT has their own DB70 form. The LGIs may wish to, I'll leave it to you guys on what your DB70 form will look like. But we just need that basic information from the sheet 1 telling us what the cost breakdowns are and where you expect to use the total cost for furniture or design fees, construction, etc. Again, this is for us to be able to have some basic talking points about the project. Now, moving on to the chunk of what we're asking for, what has changed rather significantly and what TIEC is reviewing. We have 5 components going back to that rubric that you saw. And the first is state goals and the Drive to 55. Again, how does the capital outlay project align with the needs of the state? Drive to 55, new degrees, certificates, we all know that that is a big mission of the state. So our research and workforce training. Not all of our higher education institutions are dedicated to degrees, looking at our non-formal units, but we know that they still meet really important state needs. So when you're proposing a project, we ask that you describe to us in a narrative of 1,500 words or less how your project meets those needs. And we give you some resources to help you with that. We go down here to the bottom of page 7. You see THEC's master plan that we released about a year and a half ago. UT's THEC Boyd Center, CBER Labor and Supply Demand Reports, the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, Occupations and Demand. These are resources that you can use to help you understand or tell us exactly how your projects are meeting the needs of the state. And we ask you to put that in that narrative form for us. Moving on to page 8, how your project aligns with your campus master plan and your strategic plan. Wanting to know if your project should be identified in your master plan, please show us where it is in your master plan. Also, how your project aligns with the objectives laid out in your institution's strategic plan or your governing board's strategic plan. In a 1,500-word narrative, so please tell us about that. The space guidelines and facility assessments, there are, let me see if I can find where I put this up. 1 second, please. The space guidelines are a spreadsheet that we sent out with the instructions that asks exactly, assesses your needs as an institution for different types of space. We are asking you to send us what was either included in your master plan or the most recently updated guidelines, and specifically this summary down here is what is needed for our purposes. So if you have recently done a needs assessment in the last 3 to 5 years, submit that to us. And if you've had any changes in programs or large spikes in enrollment or large declines in enrollment, or if you brought on new space, if you've had a new capital outlay project since that needs assessment had taken place, just put that in your narrative so that it provides context to say, this is, again, our most recent, but there have been some changes contextually in our needs. The program and business plans. This is a 1,000-word narrative. This is something that I know the systems have employed in the past for their own vetting of projects. We're asking the governing boards to send us what came along with this project, specifically a cost analysis of the total project. And what we mean there is all the costs that are associated with this project. How are you taking those into consideration? Not just the construction, but the design fees and furniture. Are you taking into consideration ongoing costs to maintain that facility? What are those costs, and what are your plans to maintain those, as well as how many students are directly impacted by this? These are all important to us. An anticipated project schedule for design and construction. You see that last component there, any preliminary concept sketches that provide an overview of the project. This is not a requirement necessarily. It is, again, if you have this, please send it along. We just want to know what the plans are thus far, knowing that a lot of these will be fleshed out going forward. But the basic cost analysis are very important, and knowing that this project will be sustainable for your campus and for the state. And the last part of the capital outlay is the external funding aspect. I'm sorry, let me ask, Dick Tracy, you had a question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It looks like, going back to the rubric, the TCATs have been penalized because theirs used to be their max used to be 5%, and then you've pushed them to 10% now. So they actually have to raise more money to compete than they did in the past. Is that correct?
So it was a 5.
Using your score, I mean, since they go from 0 to a max of 10%, well, their max used to be, or their requirement was 5% in the past.
Yeah.
So for them to get,
go ahead, Dick.
Yeah. So for them to compete, I guess, against somebody else, now to get that different, whatever the point difference is, they're going to have to raise more money. And the other question is, are you going to
interrupt you real quick, Dick? Yeah, that's a good point. Let's talk about that offline. We'll look into that some more. Yes.
Okay. The other question is, I think in doing the match and the external funds, are you going to, because we've bumped into this over the past about, are you going to allow student fees to be included that could be utilized for school bonds? Because the TCATs, they're not going to be able to. I mean, that's not an option that's given to them. They're to charge those additional fees, but I'm not sure they'll even qualify for. They could qualify through the school bond authority to actually be able to get funding that way.
Right. So if you guys are watching me, you saw me filtering through a lot of different pages. If you look to this sheet I have right now in front of you, this is part of our capital outlay spreadsheet. It's the second tab for external funding. It breaks down below what the types of matches are as we define them: private fundraising, land donation, grants, institutional reserves, and bonds, knowing that some bonds are paid back by student fees. I think that is one of those. Let's have continued conversations about.
Okay. The other thing is in institutional reserves. If you look at plant fund reports that we're asked to submit, the community colleges, and I mean, they're running on a shoestring budget, and they can't, and so there is no reserves. Plus, they're not able to roll money from other fees into the plant fund reserves because there's not. So, all right.
Okay.
So as long as we can continue to discuss that, that's fine.
Yeah, have this conversation. We're happy to. Our lines are open. Certainly. Thank you, Dick.
This is Alan Thomas, MTSU. So if it's student fees on that schedule, where would that be put on that schedule if you're using an existing student fee or a new student fee?
So
it's under bonds.
Yeah, if it's an existing student fee in that sense. Yeah, I think, Alan, that's a good question to go offline about. We can talk more about that, about where that would fall. We're not sure about that right now.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. We'll follow up with that. Okay. going back to the presentation, so the external funding, I just showed you the tab that needs to be filled out along for each capital outlay project that your governing board submits needs to have one of these sheets filled out as well that tells us exactly what your match is, where your match is coming. Again, if it doesn't meet the threshold associated with your project, then you cannot submit it to us. So it's got to meet that particular threshold. Moving on to maintenance requests. Again, this is also something that the focus required us to change, is how we take in maintenance from the 8 now governing boards. The basic definition of what a maintenance project is not changing. Those thresholds you see right there, that's what we've had in years prior about what a maintenance project is at, say, UT Knoxville compared to community college. That has not changed. What has changed is how we decide how much capital maintenance dollars will go to each governing board. That has been the biggest change. And we have utilized, at the bottom of page 9, you see the Sherman Durgesh formula. This is an industry standard that we have adopted. I know that has been used, I know at TBR, I think at UT in the past, where we look at the aggregated age and building type use code per campus and come up with an annual renewal cost for that campus. And that is used to determine pools, the total pools that each governing board will receive for capital maintenance. This year, we have an anticipated maintenance request of $120 million. That might change as we get closer to November, but that's where we are right now. And we have asked each institution to submit to us capital maintenance requests that meets their pools. I'm bringing up in front of you here. You see to the right, total recommendation of $120 million. The maintenance pools by governing board in the middle for you here. That is determined by that renewal cost that I already talked about. And look at Austin P. Actually, let's look at Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee has 6.8% of the total $120 million pool. So their request to us will be a total of $8.17 million. If you go to that first tab of the maintenance request, you'll see that here. I brought Middle Tennessee for you. Middle Tennessee, 8.17. It's a drop-down menu that you'll have here, so you can select your governing board. And it will give you your total, and you are to list your projects, and it must be at or under the pool allocated to your institution.
Huh.
I'm going to wrap up before we do any more questions here. Then we can have questions at the end. As we've done in the past, like with capital outlay, we have out years telling us the 4 years after 18-19 what your maintenance requests are your anticipated maintenance requests. That will follow no pool. You just need to tell us what you expect to ask in the coming years. We are not going to give you a pool money to meet at this time. Again, this is just a heads up to FNA and to our legislative process. That is also located below the spreadsheet here for your purposes in the maintenance spreadsheet. Moving on to disclosed projects. I think outside of capital match in the past, disclosed projects have been something that a lot of people have wanted to change for a long time. We've always asked that you disclose to us anticipated projects in the following fiscal year that are funded by non-state resources. That was at $100,000 was the threshold, which is a rather low threshold. And a lot of you guys pushed back on that, as well as the rigidity of that process. But we are asking you, starting in August, the year prior to the fiscal year, to tell us what your institutions will do a year after that. So we did the best we could to bring this a little bit more flexibility. And that is in two ways. First of all, we have raised the threshold to $500,000 for major maintenance projects, and are keeping the threshold at $100,000 for anything that is new constructions or erections of structure, new square footage. That will still be at the $100,000 threshold, but all the major maintenance projects will be at $500,000. We tried to go much higher than this, and we were asked to please follow as closely as possible the State Building Commission thresholds, knowing that their thresholds for new constructions was actually, I think, $0. So we're at $100,000 for new construction and $500,000 for major maintenance. Another aspect of the disclosed process that is changing, what is staying the same, first of all, is we are still asking you to submit to us your anticipated projects for 18-19. Submit that to us by September 15th of this year. That is not changing. What is changing is we're going to allow for more projects to be reported throughout the year. So starting a quarterly process where we ask you, what projects do you anticipate to start in the next quarter that you did not disclose to us during the regular capital submission process? That allows for you guys to have a little bit more flexibility in putting into place projects that you just didn't anticipate a year prior. We got some more pushback on this as well, specifically about large projects that require a master plan approval process. For instance, new residential halls. Finance and Administration and the General Assembly, they don't want that being a part of the quarterly process. So if you have really large projects that, again, are projects that were long put into your master plan, those need to come through the regular disclosed process. We're talking about, in the quarterly process, new dugouts or new greenhouses or what have you. That can be disclosed to us in the quarterly process. This is new process for us, so we'll be feeling this out as we move forward. We're going to start this actually this month. We'll be sending you guys reports asking you to let us know what disclosed projects that you have not disclosed for 17-18 that you want to starting in the quarter in July 1. We'll be sending that out to you in the next week or two. So that process is starting. But some changes to disclosed projects. We didn't get all that we wanted to with that, but we got something, so we're happy there. Are there any questions for us right now? I do want to say, and I said this to Dick as well, like, you know, some questions, and to Alan, some questions we just can't answer right now, but we will follow up with you. But I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Dick, your hand is still raised. Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've done some kind of research on the formula thing and how they come up with that whatever that index was. And one of the things I think are you guys going to submit a definition of what is maintenance, because that's maintenance and not any type of renovation, not any type of upgrades. They were theirs is based off of, you know, just regular capital maintenance. And the other question is do you have it broken down per our institution, so how much each community college would get and how much each TCAT would get?
To answer your first question, we are not changing the definition of a maintenance project from what has been done in the past. The formula, again, was a tool to help us just divvy up the pools. But if you need some clarification on what these projects are, we can certainly define those better in conversation with FNA. But that is not changing from what has been done in the past. The pools, again, we're giving the power to the governing board to differentiate by community college, by TCAT, or the UT system, differentiate by university. But of course, we use institutional level data to compile those pools. So we can send those to you offline. we'll be happy to do that. Yeah.
All right, because I think, well, like I say, and I understand if they're not changing the definition, the way they come up with that value through that index is different than I think what we've utilized in the past as far as the cost. So I guess we can take a look at that.
Okay.
I mean, it's
always be a work in progress. For this year, the pools will stay the same, but if there's things that we need to tinker going forward, we can certainly do that.
All right.
Are there any other questions?
Alan here again. On the August 14th, I believe, meeting, for the first look meeting, is that going to be all institutions? Will that be a large group?
That would be the of the 8 governing boards. Which of the governing boards are submitting capital outlay projects? So we anticipate probably seeing all the boards there. Yeah. By boards, I mean you representing MTSU, for instance. In the past, it was just UT and TBR. So Dick Tracy and Robbie Stivers came and talked about their projects. Now it's 6 more LGIs talking about their projects.
Okay, so it's more...
It's at the governing board level.
Staff and administration coming from, let's say, the universities and not necessarily being board members. Of course, they can, but that's not really a requirement as long, president comes, and some other staff to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, that's right. Whoever wants to park in Parkway Towers that day can be everyone.
Okay.
Hey, Alan. This is Crystal. As Stephen mentioned earlier, we're going to send out a formal invitation for that meeting as it gets closer, and then through the RSVP process, hopefully y'all will be able to identify who will be attending that day, so we have an idea of how many people are going to be here.
Right.
And the main thing is that the people who need to attend are the ones who know about the project. So it's not necessarily that you need to trot out your Board of Trustee members. But really, who can answer questions, since it'll be the first time we hear about many of these projects.
Okay, that helps. And, just with schedules now and stuff, the earlier I can get this on calendars, the better, as long as we can block that date and time off and then wait on the meeting invite for later, because everybody's scheduled, even though it's summer, it still gets busy. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. It's always good to send that stuff out, and we'll certainly do that.
Yeah.
We'll be on our A game as much as we can be.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. Thank you so much. Again, this is intended for your benefit. If you guys have any questions, please just pick up the phone, call Crystal, me, Taylor, Dr. Deaton. Carl will probably be the one we go to ask all of our questions on this. But again, thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a wonderful week and a wonderful summer.